This is Marriage on the Half Shell, Raw and Exposed. This will be part 2 of
High Quality Man, part 2.
Part 2. And I would just, before we got on, I was scrolling on Twitter and found something funny, so you can read it. Go ahead.
I can read it? All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can read?
Yeah.
All right. So last time I went on a rant about physical
health, yes.
And I hope you enjoyed that. There's so much more, but that I couldn't say.
It's better. Say. It's this point. It's better to bullet point that stuff because
yeah.
A lot of it's common sense. Anyway.
So the thing she found on Twitter: if you can't throw your wife over your shoulder and jog at least 25 yards, you need to either hit the gym or get a smaller wife.
And then one of the responses is, in both scenarios, they both need to drop the donuts and do some deadlifts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
We love deadlifts, actually. We both do.
Sure. I mean, I actually do.
Yeah.
Surprisingly. All right. Okay, so if you haven't listened to the previous episode, do that because we're not going to do a big introduction. All right.
Wait, it was a pretty long treatise on physical health, and
the first half was about mindset.
Yes.
And the second half was about physical health.
Right.
And we rambled all over the place, but it's so important. So work out. Anyway, go listen to that, and then you'll understand where we're coming from. Okay. So we were talking about high quality men, and some of these things apply to women as well.
Right.
Okay. The first was physical health, and the next part of the same category that we were talking about at the end of that last podcast was mental health. Okay. So I'm looking at my notes, and the first thing that I would say is, and we're talking about elimination here, and we'll not tell you what to do, but, things that you would benefit you more.
Yes.
Later. All right. So related to mental health, eliminate smoking. And that's a weird one. Because this first set applies to physical too, but mental health, right? Eliminate smoking, drugs, including pot. Eliminate porn if you watch that, because that's sexual diabetes. Interesting thing that Abby came up with. Yeah.
Okay.
Eliminate, at least for a while, eliminate social media. And I'm not saying at least for a while, eliminate porn. Eliminate that, period, all the way. Eliminate social media. Eliminate video games. Cold stop. Eliminate that stuff for a while.
Except the porn, which should be permanent.
Well, smoking, drugs.
Yes, and porn.
Porn. Okay. Eliminate those, period, forever. And then social media, eliminate it for a long while. And then maybe dip back in once a month. But if you can't be disciplined, then eliminate it all the way. Eliminate video games. And the same thing. If you can be disciplined with it, right? Play with your friends every now and then, whatever. That's fine.
Yeah, my son-in-law plays.
Yes.
Actually, yeah, my son-in-law plays, and they have a day.
Yeah.
Once a week. And he'll play he'll play his video games, and he plays with the kids. Like, they have their video games and they play.
But if you cannot be disciplined with it, and especially if you're alone and you're just playing video games, then eliminate it. Period. All the way. I'll tell you what to fill in,
Yes, that's what I was going to ask. What do you
we'll get
replace?
there.
Yeah.
but eliminate it. But if you have a group of guys that you play with once a week for a few hours, whatever, that's fine. But in the beginning, eliminate it, period. All this stuff. And finally, my notes say limit drinking. Let's start with eliminate it at least for a month. And then after that, limit it a lot. Okay. Each of these things are addictions that waste your time. Okay. Maybe you don't like the word addiction. Last episode, we talked about eliminating sugar. You know, try to eliminate that and see how hard it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How much you want all of a sudden. At least according to my own experience, but many people that I've heard about, you try to eliminate sugar and your body starts calling for the things that have sugar in them.
Yeah.
Cookies and desserts and all that stuff. All right. So each of these things are the same thing, right? Whether it's drugs, pot included, smoking with the nicotine, the porn. And okay, I promise not to ramble so much this time. Okay, so maybe we'll do a future podcast about what these things do to you, because these all affect your life and your quality of life. And I know this is a marriage podcast, but if your quality of life is affected, then your marriage is affected. Okay. All right. So they're all addictions that waste your time. They sap your life. They cause you to avoid dealing with hard things that need to be dealt with. Okay. They can cover up pain that you feel like you can't handle. But that's just a lie.
Right.
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 They prevent you from taking responsibility for things. They'll destroy your career, your marriage, and your family, or your ability to have a career, marriage, or family. Mm-hmm. So to be more successful, you want to fill the time with more constructive things, which we'll get to. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
So we just listened, and this was from a Joe Rogan podcast. Do you remember which episode it was?
Yeah, it was the one I listened to today. It's Mike. You know what? I'll look it up real quick while you're...
Okay, so it's not about listening to that whole podcast,
No, it's not.
but just one thing they said, and I want to, give credit to them. And once again, we're not medical professionals.
Mike
We're a
Baker.
doctor. The Joe Rogan podcast related with Mike Baker.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
a CIA guy.
And this has nothing to do really with them
No,
per
no,
se, but
no.
but they said it, so I thought I want to give credit. They were talking about how we only have so much time and so much bandwidth
Yes.
with our brains.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, if you count things down, we only have maybe 10,000 days. So if you divide that up into, how many weeks we have or
Yeah.
how many months we have, it's not that much. And they were talking about bandwidth of your brain, right?
Yeah.
You can only deal with so many things. And if you indulge in these things that we're talking about eliminating, and there may be other things, right, that you use to escape, right? But they're taking up your bandwidth, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that means that you don't have bandwidth to do other things,
To do important things.
to do some important things.
Right.
And we're not saying don't have fun, but it needs to be balanced toward doing the important things, right? And important things, I mean, they're not boring, right?
Right.
They're maybe spending time with your wife, going out on a date, or with your
Taking
kids.
your kids for a walk,
taking
or
your kids
playing
out,
with your
or
kids,
playing
or
with them,
yeah.
or whatever, right? So don't let, if you get into the habits of doing these other things, then, you know, these things are going to be calling to you.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, we know people, and I've heard stories of people who were addicted to porn and thought, okay, well, now I'm married and it's not going to be a problem anymore. Right. That's not how that works. Porn is devious, and yeah, sexual diabetes is a good moniker for it. Just because you have someone in your life that you're having sex with regularly does not mean that addiction is not going to come back to bite you.
True.
It probably will, as a matter of fact. It's going to be something that you're going to have to continue to fight and deal with if you don't get it under control.
Exactly. And this is a man thing generally, but women can also get caught up in it.
I'm going to talk about that on mine.
Yeah, and we'll leave that to you, to the next episode. But it will destroy your ability to enjoy sex with your wife.
Yeah.
That's just one of the
It alters
things.
your brain chemistry. That's a known fact.
Let's just
now.
go with
yes.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. Each of these things do, and
yeah.
I've said before that we could do a whole podcast on these different things.
Right.
Even though they may not look like they're related to marriage, if you want a good marriage, you need to be able to deal with these things. But we were talking about bandwidth, brain bandwidth, right? You can only do so much in a day.
Yeah.
You can only handle so much, that sort of thing. So let's deal with that. Before I go into the next category, remember this is the second of 2 parts. You may look at these things that we spend all this time talking about and say, you know, oh my gosh, it's going to take forever. Mm-hmm. But it's not. Okay. This may be a 1 or 2 or 3 year journey to just get started, right? And we're just talking about physical and mental health.
Right.
And we said before, you can, depending on where you are in life and as you self-evaluate, you can always improve in these things. And then suppose you were to take 2 or 3 years, 1 or 2 or 3 years to improve in just these areas, physical health and mental health.
Right.
Right. Eliminate your addictions and replace them with something good that we're going to talk about. What if it takes 3 years?
Yeah.
Right? So what? It's a journey, and it's not like in 3 years you're done. Right? This is a lifelong thing that everyone has to deal with, not just you who or where you are, right? So don't kid yourself. You know, it's going to take some discipline, but it is a journey. Don't cheat yourself. We talked about that before. Okay? You can allow cheats in, cheat meal, skip a gym day, whatever.
I think that you need to establish the discipline first, and then you can think about doing those things.
Right.
I think it's better not to cheat when you first start with these disciplines.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, establish a discipline.
Yeah.
And then it's not really a cheat. It's more of a...
I'm going to let my guard down and enjoy myself for the next couple of hours.
It's a very short time, right? It's a planned thing where almost a reward.
Right. I have a problem with rewarding yourself with food, but that's a whole other...
Okay.
Yeah.
Put it in whatever other way we can put it. A relaxation.
Yeah.
I don't even, that's not even a good one, because we're talking about, you know, more like a lifestyle, and your lifestyle includes every now and then I get to have a rest day, or every now and then
but
I
just think it's important to establish the discipline first and have it in place so that you reflexively are going to just go back to it.
Yeah. You're training yourself to do the thing that you want to do, so that when you enjoy the dessert,
Right.
it doesn't become this fork in the road where you take the wrong
Yeah.
road
Right.
and go on down and cheat yourself
Yeah.
and just start eating desserts all the time.
Right.
You don't
Right.
want to do that.
Yeah.
Right? It's a nice thing to have. It's great. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with it every now and then.
Sure.
And I mean every great now and then,
Yeah.
not every day or every week even. Sometimes, you have to evaluate yourself
Right.
and be honest with yourself. We talked about that. Okay, so I'm saying don't cheat yourself by cheating, right? But think about it this way, right? 1 to 2 to 3 years, oh my gosh, how am I going to do it? It's like, if you don't do anything, if you don't make a change today,
Mm-hmm.
in 3 years, you're not going to be anywhere different.
Yeah.
And you'll probably be worse off. Right?
Yeah, definitely you will be. Because you're going to be 3 years older. Your body will be 3 years older and dealing with whatever you've done to it. So,
Right.
yes.
Not only that, but, you probably end up gained more weight.
Yes. But now you're back to...
Yeah. We hope you're encouraged. We've been on this, I don't know, I feel like it's been a 20-year journey
Yeah.
of self-improvement. If you've dealt with trauma,
Right.
you've dealt with the effects of the trauma, the PTSD type symptoms.
I hate to categorize it that way, but that's pretty much what
It's
it was.
kind of like that, this traumatic experiences.
I guess it still is from time to time.
Yeah.
Also, a drug addiction.
Xanax.
Yeah, and
dealing with that.
and
You've talked
some
about that
alcohol
before.
problems with alcohol. And,
Right.
Yeah.
So you got this whole journey, and
Yeah.
for myself, it's been more like the sugar thing, and I talked
Yeah.
about that last episode
Right.
near the end of that. So it takes time, but if you want to live a successful life, if you don't want to spend your life
Deteriorating.
alone, deteriorating. Yeah, I guess that's the way to put it. All right. I promised I wouldn't rant or ramble, but I don't know how well I'm going to be able to keep that promise. I'll do my best.
I'll keep you in line.
I love you.
I know.
All right. Okay, so the second category, the last time we talked about it, the first category,
Yeah.
foundational things, and the
Right.
first category, we talked about that stuff. Second category, this should go a little faster. What was the first category? Yourself.
Right.
We're working from inside to outside.
Yeah.
The second category is how you relate to the world in general.
Right.
All right. And in that category, I put job. Do you have a job? Do you have the job that you want? That sort of thing. You want to be able to support your family if you want a family. And if you need to get a better job, right? Say, I'm not going to give any examples, but if you're, based on where you're at, if you look around and say, oh, there's no way I could support a family on this, then maybe you need a better job. And so you can go do that, right? And again, maybe you don't need to change anything else. You just need to step out and say, I'm going to try for this. Okay, a lot of people think they can't try for something, and they just feel like they can't do it, but it's all a mental block,
Right.
right? And if you just tried it, you could do it. You could maybe take a position lower down than where you want, but work your way up. Mm-hmm. Okay. The other part of that is maybe you need some more education. Okay, so that's the next part.
And that's pretty easy to do these days, to be honest.
I mean, today, oh my gosh, you can
There's
get an
so many
education
resources.
anywhere.
Yes, you really can.
And it doesn't have to cost that much.
No.
Again, I think a lot of this is this mental, I can't do it, or there's no way that's possible,
Right.
right? But you can get a college level education without ever actually going to college.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can these days, for sure.
And then you get into the ground floor of some business, and just because you don't have a degree doesn't mean you can't work your way up really fast, right? If you just, it has to do with your dedication to doing it.
Right.
Again, looking back to that 1 to 2 to 3 year things, you know, if you're dissatisfied where you are, set yourself, you know, this kind of vague, it's vague, but a broad plan. Broad is a better word.
Yeah.
In the next 3 years, I'm going to improve and move up. And so you take a look at where you are. Maybe it's the same job and you just want to move up. Or maybe it's I want to get into a different job because I need something that's going to support me for my plans in the future.
Right.
And, you know, this is a marriage podcast, so marriage and family.
Right.
Right? That's where we're coming from, but it applies to anything. So, you know, improve your education. Okay? So, quality man, good job, good education. And it doesn't mean a Bachelor of Science or a PhD, though it could.
I'm pretty sure our son-in-law just has an associate's. Am I correct about that, or does he have a bachelor's?
Which one?
The oldest.
The oldest? He's got a bachelor's.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah. But you can get there are plenty of jobs you only need an associate's. And once you get in, you get the job experience for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And job experience, believe me, counts just as much as a degree.
Right.
All right. And then as you move on, you know, I mean, if you really want to, a lot of companies will pay for your college.
Right.
Right. Depending on the company. And a lot of companies, you don't need to ever get a college degree. You know, you can move on. Or you could do a trade. Right. And you can make a lot more money.
There's a lot of trade schools out there that are well within financial grasp of just about anyone. And you can, I mean, we've talked about this before, but we put 2 of our kids in trade school when they were in high school.
Right.
And they both graduated with jobs. Good paying
they had
jobs,
jobs
actually,
when
yes.
they graduated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, you graduate from a trade school, high school type thing, and in 4 years, you're making
A lot of money.
a ton of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Compared to the college graduate who 4 years out of high school is just graduating college and barely has a job.
And probably $100,000 in debt.
Right.
Very
So,
likely. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm not saying you know, if your talents lie within
Some STEM field.
some STEM field, science, technology, engineering, and math. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's
where
it.
Math applies, unless you're going to be a math teacher.
I don't know.
But that's not what that means. I'm sure it probably folds back into engineering and
Right.
so on. And anyway, you know, we're not saying don't go do that, but don't think you have to go for a degree that
It's not going to give you a job
isn't
at the
going
end
to
of
give
college.
you a good paying job at
Right.
the end of college. All right. So that's that job and education. Related to education, you want to become a man who's always learning. That's kind of separate, but just keep that in mind. You know, you always want to be learning
Right.
about things and learning different things. Just keep learning. Right? Okay. The third part is you want to be someone who can carry on a conversation. And I'm thinking, there's a lot of notes here.
Well, I think it's because there are a lot of men who struggle with that.
I guess.
And if you want to make a woman feel valued and appreciated, then being able to have a good conversation is important. You and I have had this discussion because I'm more talkative than you are.
Yeah. Yes,
I'm more blunt, you know, obviously.
Right.
But I'm more talkative than you are, and there are times when I would like for you to initiate the conversation because I want to know that you're interested in me.
Okay.
That you're interested in me, that you're interested in what's going through my head and what's going on in my life and all of that stuff.
Sure.
So
I get
that's
that,
yeah. But yes, you want to be able to do that for your wife, but you also want to be able to do that in general.
We're talking about world relating to the world around you.
Yeah.
So if you can carry on a conversation in general,
Yeah.
This isn't about your wife necessarily,
Right.
or getting a date, meeting somebody somewhere, though it applies. You want to be able to communicate with the world around you, with the people around you, right?
Right.
Okay. So you want to learn how to converse with, so that others want to talk with you and feel that you're interested in them.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And my goal of any conversation is when the other person walks away from me, they feel like I was interested in them. They feel better about having talked to me.
Right.
And it's not, I don't want to say this is not manipulation. It's just about, how you present yourself to the world.
Right.
And others, if they feel good about you, then they're going to be more likely to help you
Yes.
in the future, or come back to you and be more friendly,
Right.
or tell someone else about you, right? And this isn't all about, again, I'm really trying not to make it like, it's not all about you, but it's about how you present yourself. And if you've got something good to do in the world, if you want to be able to do that thing, whatever it is, you're going to need the help of other people. And if you have people on your side, then it's going to help you,
Right.
to accomplish your goal.
So we mention these men a lot, or when we talk, but I just two very good examples of men who are able to conduct conversations with people and leave them feeling like, I feel like I was respected and listened to.
Yeah.
Right. So one is obviously Jordan Peterson. If you listen to any of his podcasts,
Sure.
he can be contentious at times, and it can be that way, but for the most part, he's obviously very smart, obviously very well educated, but he's also very compassionate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he has a high understanding of human beings and how they work, right?
Yeah.
So he knows how to conduct a conversation.
He's relatable.
He's very relatable. But the other one is Joe Rogan. I mean, every podcast he does is almost 3 hours, if not past 3 hours.
Yeah.
Now, as
right
a
around 3
man,
hours.
yeah, but as a man, imagine having a 3 hour conversation with someone.
With another man.
With
or
another,
woman.
yeah. I mean, he's had obviously both. Sometimes he has a couple of guys or whatever. And I am pick and choose my, Joe Rogan podcasts, or, because there are certain people that I'm interested in and I want to hear what they have to say. But he is empathetic. He's very intelligent, very well read. He asks good questions. He keeps the conversation going. He makes the person feel like he's heard everything that they have said.
Yeah.
And he understands them. He had Matt Walsh on just a short while ago.
Okay.
And Matt Walsh is a contentious figure. I'll grant you that. He is, he's controversial. Well, I think we can put him in that category. I like him personally, but he has the kind of personality that I'm gravitate to. But they had an interesting back and forth at the end of the podcast about marriage, oddly enough, and how they have different views on what it is. And it never broke down into actual fighting or an argument, but it was an interesting debate. And they both conducted themselves like gentlemen, and they both shook hands and walked away.
Yeah.
And I think that Joe would be willing to have him back on, and Matt has been listening to him for years and has a lot of admiration for him. So if you want,
It's funny. It almost felt like, I think it's weird. And I'm going to say this so you can get an understanding of where Joe Rogan is coming from and how he conducts himself
Yeah.
as a man.
yeah,
Where I think like he asked some questions that I felt like Matt wasn't prepared for.
I kind of felt that too, a little
Just
bit. Yeah.
felt like
yeah,
that
yeah.
when you listen to it. And that's okay. But I think Joe Rogan's success and his the way you can look at him as a man and say, he has some interesting questions that
Yeah.
Matt couldn't answer,
Right.
but at the end, it wasn't a "I gotcha" or anything like that.
Nothing like that.
Like you said, he was a gentleman.
Yes.
And they may have disagreed or maybe didn't come to a complete understanding or
Right.
however you want to look at that
Yeah.
portion of the conversation. But at the end, you're right. They were, hey, great. This was a great conversation.
Yes. And it was.
Yeah.
It really was. So anyway, I'm just saying, as a man, if you want to learn how to conduct conversations with other human beings, there are some good examples out there. Jordan Peterson's podcasts tend to be closer to an hour if if you don't want to spend. I invest the 3 hours, but that's because, well, A, I like Joe Rogan, but B, most Saturdays I'm hanging around the house and I'm doing my domestic goddess stuff. So it's just easy for me to put it on and just have it playing and I can listen to it, whatever.
Yeah.
So
Joe's a good example
yeah.
of a man who is able to carry on a conversation
Yes.
and make his guests feel welcome and make his guests feel heard.
Yes.
Very rarely, even when he disagrees,
Right.
very rarely is it their contention.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Okay. This includes being able to converse about relevant topics.
Yes.
Okay. So the next thing would be to be able to read various things, right? And read lots of stuff and make it varied, right? A lot of nonfiction, I would say, and some fiction, limited. I actually read a lot of fiction, but try to read nonfiction, whether it's articles or essays or nonfiction books,
Right.
but on varied subjects, historical characters, I just read parts of a book. You don't have to read the whole book, right? It's your time, right?
Yeah.
So pick something, but I read portions of a book about Ben Franklin. He was an interesting character.
Yeah, he really was.
Very interesting. I may not want to emulate all of his life, but he was a very interesting character. Okay, so read.
And this is you were talking about, we don't watch porn, don't play video games and social media. This is what you
do this instead, right?
Read. And you do a lot of audiobooks.
Yeah.
Honestly,
it could be audiobooks.
You do a lot of audiobooks.
While you're doing something else,
Yes.
and I'm not talking about audiobooks while you're watching porn. I'm audiobooks while I'm cutting the grass, or audiobooks while I'm working on a project.
Right.
Or just sit there and listen to the audiobook, or while I'm driving somewhere, or whatever. Okay. But yeah, that was my next point. It's like this, the time should replace the other things, right? Spend time on doing this instead of things that are a waste of time. Let's see. Oh yeah, it said some news articles, right? So I only mention news so you can find topics, current topics to talk about or to go research. So you got time now, right? All this time,
Right.
maybe, unless you're married, maybe you don't have that much time, but the time you have, learn about some subject, right? I think we walk through life and don't have any idea about how to talk about things in depth or think about things in depth, right? A lot of the things that are going on in the world around us. I mean, so to be able to talk with others more deeply about some important subject, right? if you can talk about what you think and then listen to what they think, you'll learn some things and maybe you'll influence them, and you can,
Right.
we can all kind of, have this, I'm going to say consensus. That's an overused term, but this idea about, how the world should be related to this subject or that subject or whatever.
Right.
The next one is evaluate your values, okay, and then be able to defend or justify why you believe what you believe or why you think what you think, okay. Once again, that may give you ideas if you don't really, if you're not able to articulate your values. A high quality man, has a set of values that they believe in, that they uphold. If you don't know why you believe those things, then why do you believe them? Why should you believe anything if you don't know why?
Right.
Okay, so you want to be able to defend your beliefs or justify your beliefs, at least to yourself and maybe to others as you talk to others. All right, the next thing is figure out your meaning and purpose for life. Okay, high quality man, you're going to have a purpose in your life. You don't want to just drift around. And I'm not going to say much more about that, but because that's a really big subject.
Right. Recommend both of Jordan Peterson's books to help you
to get started.
Started on
Okay, so 12 rules for life,
and then beyond 12
beyond
rules.
12 rules, which is basically 12 more rules.
12 more rules, yes.
And as we said at the beginning of this, sit there and say, well, 12 rules plus 12 rules is 24 rules. You read through that, and that's a lot.
Right.
All right, but you don't have to implement this overnight.
Right.
One thing at a time. Each of these things that we've talked about in this that we're going to talk about in this podcast, or we have talked about, or the ones we've talked about in the previous podcast, pick one thing and just do it for a month, right? Establish that habit, and then pick the next thing for the next month, but continue the first one.
Right.
Okay. So that because I'm not sure that, I don't know what the research shows, but the establishing a habit, what you're trying to do is establish a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And if you do it for a month, that doesn't necessarily mean that you've got it. Okay?
No, it doesn't.
Keep going with it. So second month, start the next thing, but continue doing the next one. And the third month, start a third thing, but continue doing the previous two.
Right.
Right. And we talked about, 1, 2 to 3 years. Oh my gosh, it's going to take so long. At the end of that first 12 months, what have you done? You've established 12 habits.
Yeah.
12 things that are going to benefit you. And they may not, the payoff may be another year or two down the road, right? As you continue, especially with, physical activity and diet. It's going to take time, but not as long. One, it's not as long as you think. And two, if you do nothing, then you're not going to just, I said last podcast, you're going to be where you were before. It's like, or where you are now, but in reality, you're going to be behind.
Probably worse.
Because we usually get worse. If we're not really trying to be better, we get worse.
Stagnant water does not get better over time.
Yeah.
It only becomes more stagnant and
just
disgusting.
Gets worse.
Yes.
Exactly. So if you're not moving forward, you are going backwards. You're not staying in one place. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so to sum up this category, job, education, some informal learning, as we talked about, the reading, carrying on a conversation, values and purpose, and one more thing I'll mention here that you can begin to work on is other capabilities is what I wrote down. I don't know why. So what other things might you need to learn how to do?
Mm-hmm.
We're moving out of the inside, out of the internal parts of you as a person, and moving to the world, how you relate to the world around you, and then how you might relate to individuals. That's the next category. But I want to say your other capabilities before you even begin to relate to other people. What other things can you do? Are you the type of person who can do stuff like fix things? Can you cook? Yeah. There's a stereotype that women like to cook, or women should be the one cooking. You know what I'm saying?
It's not. That is.
And
it's just so not the case in our house, actually. To be completely honest,
if as a man you don't know how to cook, then you should learn how to cook.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you'll do all the cooking.
Right.
It just means that you know how to do it. And I enjoy it. I enjoy cooking things. I enjoy baking. We over the holidays, there was 2 or 3 times where it's like, okay, let's make French macarons. And it's like I hadn't done that in years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think my daughter and I did it years ago just to try to figure it out. But then I just picked it up and said, like, let's figure this out. And some were terrible and some worked out pretty well. Right? So it's like, okay, now I know how to do that enough to do it.
Yeah.
And it was not my intention to start a bakery with, and selling those things or anything like that. But it's like, okay, cool, I can do this. So I learned how to do something. And learning how to cook different things. I'm not a creative person in the kitchen in the sense that I can just throw together a recipe and I know how different ingredients go together.
One of our sons is like that.
Is like
he does that. Yeah, he does that. Like he's not afraid to experiment. So he came into we were out somewhere and we came home and he said, I tried this thing where I put this and that and I did this and cooked it and then I put pasta in it and blah, blah, blah. Like a couple of my kids are like that. And this is the one that we actually, when he was younger, we nicknamed him the King of the Crock Pot. He doesn't really do that anymore.
No, not lately.
But, and the reason we nicknamed him that was because I made a point of teaching all 6 of my children how to cook so that they could take care of themselves and take care of their families when the time came. And his thing was get up before school, chop everything up, throw it in the crock pot, and go about his business. He's like,
when it was his day
when it was his day to cook, that's what he did.
Yeah.
It's like we're getting a crock pot meal on Tuesdays, whatever his day was, right? And I didn't care. It's like there's food on the table. I've got 6 kids. I don't want to think about it. There's food on the table and it tastes okay. So
and he
it didn't
learned
matter.
how to do something.
Yeah, he did.
He did vary his recipes.
He did.
But,
he did.
All right.
Sorry, tangent.
Well, but now he does different things, and tonight he came over with this plate with a bunch of different spices on it, and we said, "Okay, it's date night. We're going out." And he came over, and no, that was last night.
That was last night. Yeah.
He made whatever it is he made.
I don't know what he made. He cleaned up after himself. That's all I care about.
He cleaned up after. Yeah. All right.
Anyway.
And that's not going to be his job.
No.
But he knows how to do it, and I think that ability to learn new things, and it's not just cooking, right? I would say that's a big one.
It actually is, yeah.
Right, but because especially if you're teaching children, if you teach them how to cook, and they can learn that, they learn that they can learn other things.
Yeah.
And they continue learning.
All
right. So that's what I'm talking about. Whatever interests you, but learn stuff. Mm-hmm. Right? And if you get yourself in the habit of learning stuff, then when something else comes up, like axe throwing, I'm going to go to we have these axe throwing places that you can
Yeah,
go and you
yeah.
pay a few bucks and you can go out with your friends and throw axes at a target, right? And it's like, well, how do I do that, right?
Yeah.
You know, or something else. I
Right.
mean, I taught my daughters, well, the boys too, but I taught the kids how to change a tire and how to
Check their
the
oil and yeah.
you know, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my gosh, you know, go to YouTube and how to do this or that.
Yeah.
Right. How to change a light bulb. how to install a new CPU in my computer. I mean, there are videos out there for
Right.
just about anything you can search on, right? So go learn stuff. But especially that one, right? Learn how to cook. As a man, learn how to cook. Okay, so learn how to do things. I guess the overarching part of that is learn how to do new things, right? But cook.
Take care of yourself.
Fix things.
Yeah, take care of yourself. Take care of your house.
Yeah, how can I fix things in my house that are minor, especially, you know, I when we had a leak in the plumbing, you know, I actually had a plumber come in and do it, but he said, "Oh, it's this thing," and I'm sitting there thinking, I just paid you a lot of money, but I could have fixed that myself because I've done it before.
Right.
But the water leaked down on the ceiling. Mm-hmm. Of the kitchen and the whole ceiling, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 square feet were messed up because the water dripped down on that drywall and of the ceiling. So I had to cut that all out and put that back up and make it look nice and smooth and then paint it and all that stuff. It's like I had done that before because I learned how to do it.
You just built me 2 bedside tables.
Well, yeah, there's that.
You did.
And just, but that, you know, a saw and a nail gun. I mean, you know, I learned how to do that. Mm-hmm. And believe me, I mean, it didn't just happen. I looked at YouTube videos or I figured things out for myself.
Right.
Sometimes and made mistakes and said, oh, that doesn't work, you know, but let's try it. You know, but I didn't have this mindset of, oh, I failed, I give up. It's like, okay, how am I going to make this work? You know, and thought through stuff. So
learn things.
All right, so learn things. The next category of things, and this is the last one, I think, is how we relate to individual people. Mm-hmm. All right, so the first one was internal,
right,
self-improvement kind of things. The next was how do we relate to the world around us. And this last category is how we relate to individuals.
Okay.
All right. All right. So the first, be respectful of others and be a gentleman. Okay. Underneath that, right? Listen with the intent to understand and then respond later. Okay. You want to understand people. And so you're talking about this individual, and you want them to feel like you've heard them,
right?
And they're gonna love you for that, mm-hmm. Right? And I'm not necessarily talking about a date. I'm talking about any individual that you're talking to, okay? And then you can respond later, you know, listen with empathy, that sort of thing. All right, being a gentleman. Hold the door for others. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily for women, right? Hold the door for somebody.
Right.
Just do it. Even for another guy. They'll say, thanks. You know,
yeah.
Very rarely will somebody not like that. And if they don't like it, just, okay, and move on. I mean, we live in South Carolina, so I've never saw anyone who didn't thank me for holding the door for them. Oh my gosh. All right. Say you're on a date. Okay, now we're moving into, you know, you're on a date. Even if you're on a date with your wife, right? Walk on the street side of the sidewalk. That's a southern thing, I think. But think about it. If you think about it.
Yeah.
Walk on the street side. As a gentleman, pay for the date. Be imaginative and plan it out. Okay? So this is just about being a gentleman. All right, the next one. Support others' interests. Okay, so avoid one-upmanship. When somebody tells you something, remember you're listening to understand. So
Right.
you don't come up with something that says, "Oh, that happened to me too." You know, I mean,
Right. That's one of my bad habits. I tend to do that.
okay,
Yeah.
you know, they don't care,
Right.
and you take away the impact of them telling you, and you basically destroy what they get out of telling you. You know,
Right.
if you empathize with them and say, "Wow," you know, whatever you need to say, "Wow, that must have been difficult. Tell me about it," or whatever. You know, it doesn't matter whether you went through the same experience.
Right.
You're trying to help them deal with it, right? It's not about you, it's about them. So you're a gentleman, right? You are by this time, if you've done all this stuff,
Yeah.
you should be self-confident enough you don't have to tell them about the fact that it happened to you,
Right.
right? And it doesn't matter, because if you just focus on them, then you're going to benefit too. You don't need to one up them.
Right.
Okay. So under that, support others' interests, you know, take an interest in helping others, help them to meet their goals, right? Your self-confidence will mean that you don't have to call attention to yourself. And you can give of your time for others. Now, within reason, you know, like balance and all that stuff. And people talk about self-care versus others' care. And, you know, I'm not saying, you know, destroy yourself. But I'm saying, you know, there are plenty of times when, you know, it's just easy to help others and
Right.
leave yourself out of it. You're being a better person by doing that. All right. Be organized and intentional. You're going to make plans for the future and develop this drive. We've already talked about developing yourself. So to make progress toward some goal, some plan, whatever it may be. Okay? A high quality man. Take obligations seriously. If you promise something, then fulfill that promise. Or don't make that promise if you can't do it.
Right.
Right? You got to be honest with people. You know, I can't do that, but I can do this maybe,
Right.
or I just can't do it. But if you say, yeah, I'm going to be there, then be there. Okay? Take your obligations seriously. If you're friends with somebody, you know, then support them when they need it. They'll support you when you need it. Okay? Be an independent thinker. Okay? Don't just follow along, but form your own opinions. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. Know why you believe what you believe. The next thing, prefer life in the real world. Remember, we talked about avoiding social media
And video games.
and video games and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Do stuff outside,
Yeah.
right? Be in the real world, because that's
Talk to
where
your
we all
neighbors.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're all in the real world outside, right? Not in some virtual world. Be present and involved. Okay, that's kind of the same thing, but, you know, be there for people and then serve somewhere, whether it's in your church or just somewhere where you can give a little bit of time. We're not talking about a whole ton of time, but just a
Right.
little bit, where you can serve others. You know, you'd be surprised at how fulfilling it is. Okay. And then this is why I held this last, you know, as we're moving from the outside or inside to the outside, you know, so what's the most outside part of us is how we dress.
Yeah.
So dress appropriately for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're already taking care of your health. So dress confidently, and then learn some personal hygiene. And these are external things, But external things display the inner person.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So your external should match the internal, and sometimes people will say, dress for success or dress whatever, dress for the job you want to have, not the job you have, that sort of thing. It's like, okay, that's a little backwards, but it gets you a little farther along. But what I'm saying is, and I'm not saying dress up in a suit all the time. I'm saying dress appropriate for the situation.
Right.
Don't be a slob. Have personal hygiene. Get your hair cut, trim your beard, brush your teeth, wear deodorant, a little cologne maybe, and some nice clothes. If you're going to go on a date, even if it's with your wife, dress
Especially
up a little bit.
if it's with your wife.
Well,
What?
yeah, okay. Okay, so it's almost like your wife, a date with your wife and a date with this new person.
Yeah.
If you're not married, obviously.
Right.
They're almost like equal importance, right? You're trying to impress this new person, but you're trying to show your wife that she's worthy of you dressing nicely.
Yeah.
And again, we're not talking about a suit.
Yeah.
And there are some situations where you may want to wear a suit, like a job interview.
Right.
Or a presentation or, something like that.
You have what we call the wedding and funeral suit.
I do. But, yeah, if I'm going to dress up, I bought myself a new hat. I love that hat. And I'll wear that hat and, dress in, I'll still have
nicer,
jeans.
Yeah, nicer, but nicer
I might
clothes,
put on some boots and jeans and a nicer shirt, and that's good enough.
Right.
For a lot of things. I don't need to put on a 3-piece suit. So we've moved from the inside all the way to the outside of your clothes, which is not really you, but it displays the inner person. So if you want to be a high quality person, then take all those things into account. All right. So see the show notes. We will take some time, probably over the next week or 2 or 3, to fill those out as we pull them together. Mm-hmm. I want to go ahead and post this podcast quick, or the next 2 episodes quick, and then we'll get the links out there. Of course, you can find your own stuff too. But I do say, be discerning. Make sure that what you're using as a guide aligns with your values. Okay? Self-proclaimed experts are not always really experts.
And there was a young man recently who apparently has been very popular on social media. I'm not going to say his name. You probably can figure out who I'm talking about. Who had put himself out there as some kind of an alpha male, as if he was pointing men in the right direction.
Okay.
And in all honesty, I had not heard of this person until 2-3 weeks ago when he started to make trouble, I guess. And I did not realize that he had a lot of sway over young men. I've heard sound bites from a lot of what he said, and I have to say I agree with an awful lot of what he said, but I will tell you right now, gentlemen, he's not the one you want to follow.
Well,
don't do it.
He identifies, here's what some, I heard this, is like he identified the problems with men, the problems men face in society today.
Yeah.
Pretty accurately, but the solutions were pretty bad.
They weren't all bad.
Not all bad.
I'm not going to say that, but if you want to follow a man who is going to help you put your life together the way it should be so that you're headed in the right direction, then follow Jordan Peterson, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Well,
he's
Jordan
a much
Peterson,
better. My daughter and I went to listen to him
Yeah,
speak
yeah.
a few months ago, and I'm telling you, the majority of the people in the audience were young men between the ages of, say, 16 and 40. And I know that's a pretty wide age range, but it's millennial and some Gen Z young men that were in that audience soaking up what he had to say.
Yeah. Well, because
He's-
they were like lost and needed to hear
Yes, they're
something.
lost, but they need to hear it from somebody who's done it.
Yeah. He
Jordan Peterson has been married as long as we have.
30 some years.
30s, yeah. And he's close to our age. He's a little bit older than us. He's got 2 very successful children. And I love listening to both of them, actually. They're great. He's got grandkids. I mean, he's done it. He's done the journey, you know.
Right.
So
And this other guy that you're talking about, it's like he had captured, in a sense, captured the market share
yes.
of lost young men, if you
Yeah.
want to put it that way. But his whole thing has fallen apart.
Yeah.
His advice was just horrible as it related to relating to other people.
And particularly women. I mean,
particularly women.
yeah.
And it was just-
so
it was just horrible,
Okay,
you know.
the point is, be extremely discerning
Yeah.
about who you are taking advice from. Take advice from my husband, who's also been there. No, we've been married we've been married 34 and a half years.
Yeah.
We've got 6 kids. We've got 6 grandkids and another one on the way.
Yeah.
We have a little experience under our belts.
Just
We
a
do,
little.
you know what I mean? And we've
Yeah.
been through a lot of, sorry, but we've been through a lot of shit. We have,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? So
And we're not saying we've got
we don't have all the
Everything
answers.
100%
We don't
down.
have it all figured
Yeah.
out. We don't. But, you know,
we
all I'm saying is be discerning about who you take your advice
yeah.
from when
That's
you
what we're
want
saying.
to be, when you want to develop yourself as a quality man. Just be careful. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm
right.
saying.
Right. And again, look in the show notes. They'll get there. Come back later. This is a journey. It's not like this one-time thing where
Right.
you listen to it, listen to us, you know, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Right? Come back, listen to it slowly and take notes, and then pick one thing and start working on it. And
Yeah.
then pick another thing and start working on it.
Right.
And come back and look at the resources. You know, it's not a one-time, one-stop thing. Okay?
Just because life is not like that.
Exactly. And we're not even saying we've got all the answers. We're just saying
We don't.
I think what we've laid out is boiled down from a lot of what we've had to deal with, what we've learned over years, and you can get started with it at least,
Right.
you know, and then branch off. Who knows? But all right. My final note here is a lot of what we talked about. I said this earlier, but I'm going to say it again. A lot of what we talked about applies to women as well.
I'm
Okay?
going to go into it in when I do my version of this.
Yeah. So
Yes.
so the next episode is the high quality woman. Hopefully we'll be able to keep that at one episode.
I tend to talk in more bullet points, and I
Yeah,
tend to be
Abby's more
direct.
blunt and bullet pointed, which is fine. But you know, because we covered a lot of foundational things that applies to both men and women in this podcast and the
Right.
previous, then when you hit the bullet points for that one, the next one, it won't be quite as long.
Right.
All right, so
This
Let's sign off.
this might be one of our this is maybe our longest. No, I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not going to measure.
It doesn't matter. You had a lot of good things to say, and I'm.
So did you.
So we hope you have a nice evening. And this has been Marriage on the Half Shell, Raw and Exposed.